On today's episode, we're talking Sophie and Ponyo with Tacocat. I'm Rob Swackhammer, and this is Make Them Awesome. Hey folks, welcome. It's Rob, and of course, always with me.
I don't know what side I'm on, but hello.
Yes. So today we're talking about Hannah Alexander's Sophie Hatter and Ponyo, which Kirsten had been working on. When did you actually start that? Because I know you had talked about wanting to do at least Sophie.
Well, I've been wanting to do Sophie since the sketch was posted on her Patreon as a teaser, but as for when I started, so it was before school got out, maybe April, maybe a little before April. I'd have to look for certain. A few months, at least on Sophie.
Yeah, and then so how did the idea for Ponyo come about? Because I know you, like you said, you wanted to do Sophie for a while, but then Ponyo was just kind of, we're doing it.
Well, as you know, but I don't know if everyone else knows, Lauren, aka Mermaid Child, the one who wears things with me, not here. She might pop in though. I did invite her to pop in and say hello, so we will see. Often goes, I want it. And I'm like, okay, going on the list. And so after I finally actually committed to Sophie, and this was a while, because even last year I'd bought 1 yard of silk, but I was like, okay, whenever I get to Sophie, this is for Sophie. But yeah, so when I decided to finally commit and actually make Sophie, I was like, okay, well, what things did Lauren say she wanted that were Studio Ghibli by Hannah Alexander, or even another artist, but just a redesign, so that
right, so it
wasn't a really fancy versus the plain outfit from the movie. Yeah. You know, I wanted it to have some continuity, and it came down to 2 designs. It was either the Kiki one or Ponyo, and so Lauren and I talked and we were trying to figure out what we wanted to do. And I was like, okay, well, if we look at it this way, here is the fabrics I have. And I think I probably have more stuff for Ponyo than I do for Kiki, because I had fabric for the petticoat, fabric for the dress. Actually, all the fabrics for the dress I had. I mean, we really just had to buy heat transfer vinyl, dye, and rhinestones, and the wig, and some flowers. But most stuff I already had.
Okay, so let's actually get into the breakdown here. I think Merkitty's talking about some of the Nero photos.
Yeah, I saw that. I was like, you don't know about anime, and then I looked up and I saw the Nero. Yeah, there was a lot of tape involved in that. Tape and prayers.
Let me put it this way: we did not expect that level of accuracy for that character. That was for certain.
Nope.
So,
but that's not what we're supposed to talk about today.
Yes. And actually, it didn't even rotate to my final image, so I got to go all the way back to the beginning because I'm an idiot.
Oh, okay. You're getting a sneak peek about where we're going.
Yes. And of course, it's being a little slow because I got the fade transition in there. Yeah, this was a lot of fun to put together earlier. So, let's actually talk about the corset here.
All right, cool.
Especially especially for your fabric choices. I mean, you talk a lot about corsetry anyway.
Yes, because last year I kind of took a dive into learning. Well, actually, 2020 is when it really started with the first one, and then with Zelda and Belle, I wanted to try to improve and make it better, right? So this one actually, for this particular pattern, is probably the best I've done, and this is the 3rd time I use this pattern, which this pattern is the truly Victorian underwear for 1840 to 1900. So it includes 2 different corsets. You can't really see this one, which this is the one I made, actually, the Silverado, so it has gores on the top rather than no gores and just being curvy, long pieces. It's not a good description of it, but you know what I mean, hopefully.
Yeah.
And so things I'd learned from the other times was fabric choices for okay, if I want to use silk, I should flatline it to the strength layer and do some other stuff to it. That's what I learned from Zelda. And then starting with Belle, I decided to get fun with the lining fabrics because I saw a lining fabric that it's like, I need to use this. And same thing happened with Sophie. I, at a thrift store, saw this cute cotton with hats. And I could not leave without it. It's perfect for Sophie Hatter.
It's like must have.
But yeah, so for this particular pattern, which it's the Laughing Moon one, I highly recommend it if you want to get into making corsets or you've done some but you haven't tried historical ones. It's a very well written pattern, and it's actually how I learned how to make corsets. And it, like how I did Belle, I used the methods from this one rather than the methods in its own pattern for the red threaded 1860 gourd pattern, I think is what I used for Belle.
Yeah.
Maybe. I don't know. There's a video on that.
Yes, find it on YouTube.
Yes, it is on YouTube. But yeah, so the main alterations I had to make to this pattern was lengthening it a bit, which I realized with the 3 different mid-bust corsets I've made that are historical ones, I have had to lengthen all of them.
Yeah.
Generally 3/4 of an inch to about an inch.
Yeah, I remember you and I talking about that before, yeah.
Because I told you when I was doing for the current one I'm working on, which is an Edwardian one, so it's different shape than this one. I also had to lengthen it out. Interesting trend.
Yeah.
But yeah, so here, the top image, you can see the different layers of it, which for this one, that was actually before I basted together all the layers, because there's pins.
Yeah.
So after that, I basted it together. So, your longer stitch setting. Serged everything because silk likes to fray a lot. So serge every single edge of that silk. Then the middle one shows like the construction of it. So that's the outer shell, or my fashion layer shell, as I will call it.
Yeah.
I don't know what I should really call it. The pattern just calls it the fashion layer. In the bottom one, that was after busk installation, which the busk is the thing with the pegs and the little holes, so it makes it easier to get into if you're trying to put it on by yourself to have a busk in the front. You will have kind of lumps that you might need to try to hide depending on what you're putting over it, but busts are great because technically you don't need help. It is easier with help, like straighten out the back of the lacing and all that, but busks are your friend. There's also the twill tape that I put in there, and that is to help reduce the stress along your waist, because that's where it's cinching the most on the corset.
Yeah.
Especially with silk, you want to help your silk out and not stress it out. Yeah. That's all I can think of for this image.
All right, so let's move on, because one thing you also called out in your build book here was hand making your bias tape.
Yes. So for your corsets, or at least the way I finish them, I use a double fold, and like some of their cotton ones are okay, but when you want a gold-ish color, they only have this one horrid like foily gold.
I've seen it.
I hate using it.
Oh God, yeah.
Yeah, I used it
sometimes it just does not look right.
I used it for Frozen Fever Anna, and it likes to fray far too much. But I have learned I like using the Dupionis for it. Yeah. So my bias tape, which it should look familiar because I use the same bias tape for Belle's corset. I think I just made that one whiter though. But yeah, so it is a polyester Dupioni from, oh boy, it is not the one from Fabric Wholesale Direct. I'd have to look to see where I got it. It's not fabric.com either. Oh boy, I'll have to look. Anyone actually really wants to know where I got that, because it's a really wide Dupioni, I believe. But it's a nice gold color. It's not too orange, not too yellow. And it has a little bit more to it than like a champagne color would, in my opinion. So let me know and I'll figure out the store I bought it from.
Go look through your emails, like, when did I buy it? Yeah.
Yeah, I've done that before, because I'm actually probably going to buy more of it at some point for Anastasia, because I like this color of gold. Yeah. And next year, she's finally going to happen after all the years of me saying I want to make it. Just like Sophie. For a long time I was saying I want to make it, and finally caved and made it. But
right.
yeah, so here, this was after all of the steel boning was put in, as well as the corset flossing, which I thought I gave you an image on the corset flossing.
You might have, but I
note
just
on that.
Oh.
So that is what these stitches are. So that helps hold the bone in the correct position in the boning channel. And it's just some embroidery floss so that it doesn't slide up or down. It's helpful. And you can get fun and do it very decorative methods. So for this, I did like kind of like little half like starburst kind of things because, you know, like the whole shooting star scenes and all of that. Right? So that's why I opted for that rather than like some of the hatches or the X's or the V shape.
Yeah.
So the adding of the bias tape on this is the same way as I did for Belle and other corsets. You know, unfolding it, stitching in the ditch on one of the fold lines. Or, well, technically, I guess it's not stitching in the ditch. You sew down the fold line.
Right, yeah.
And then for the back side of it, because of not wanting the visible stitching, I will go ahead and do a hand stitch so that this is nice and secured on this side with no stitching here. So, the nice way to do it, I prefer it. I've been converted to team hand sew down your bias tape always. Thanks, Wig Cosplay for doing that.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, where's Janella here to, like...
Yes, Wig Small converted me to team hand sew down the backside of your bias tape.
Yes.
But it does make it look nice.
Yeah, because I remember we had that discussion a few times, actually, with her. So, anyway, so let's continue on here. And this is the chemise.
Yes, so this chemise is a part of this pattern, which I'll show the back so you can see it better. There are a couple of different variations. So I did the sleeveless. This one, there's like a little puffy sleeve and then a like gathered at the top sleeve. So I knew, you know, being in Texas, it is going to be hot. We'll go with the sleeveless one, and that makes it a little bit more versatile for the different costumes I can use it for. Though it was a little weird to sew those curves because the top portion of it is lined, and you have to hand sew down the lining on the inside. But getting those curves to sit just right was a pain. So I will warn you if you do this style that it gets a little fiddly and took a lot of ironing and pinning and clips and whatnot to try to get it to behave.
Yeah, good to know there. All right. And so now we're actually talking about the fabric for the skirt, and especially like...
Actually, all the fabric.
All the fabric.
Everything on Sophie was dyed. Yes. Everything on the outside.
But this was, or this series of images was a great way to show off the... Well, is it necessary? I mean, ombre, transition, whatever you want to call it, because you had a few different colors from what I read in the build book, correct?
Yes, because Hannah Alexander loves doing multicolored gradients and ombres. It's great. It looks pretty, but dyeing it can be a pain, especially when it has a train.
Yeah.
So for this, I started with a polyester white chiffon from Fabric Wholesale Direct. And then the blue satin is actually something I had in my stash. There was like 12 or 13 yards of it. I got it at a thrift store for less than $10.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's a lightweight, maybe charmeuse type satin based on the weight of it. But I'm not certain for sure what they would call it. But it's a polyester satin. And it was cheap. So all of that was dyed first with the blue using Rit Dye More in... What did I say? It's royal blue, but I did add a little bit of Kentucky blue, so that's slightly a greener blue because it was swaying a little purpley. So I wanted to add something that was slightly greenish to sway it the other way.
Right, yeah.
Which I happen to have that color on hand. I was like, okay, we're going to pour a little bit of this in, which, this is your note. When it comes to dyeing, some people are very, very precise. I just kind of...
Not her, believe me.
I do a lot of testing to make sure that it does the right color, but I don't necessarily do a lot of measurements. I dip something, look at the color. Okay, it's swinging this way. I want to add a little of this, so it does this. But one thing to note on this, because of it being a high-low skirt with a train, and how the pink was, so if you look at the art, it's a consistent height from the hem all the way around. So you can't just like dunk that straight in. For the blue, you would do it like the waist in first and holding the hem. If you did that, your front hem might have this much pink while your train would have this much. So I had to do like a very fiddly pinning thing so I could hold it weird and have the waist all at the right length so that down the skirt it would hopefully stay fairly consistent, which for the most part it was. There was a few spots where the water maybe splashed up a little bit, but it worked. And then for the pink, I had to do the reverse, so this is when I moved where I was holding in the pins so that the pink would only go up, say that 10 inches or whatever it ended up being.
Right.
Though it took a lot more dye than I thought it would for this.
Oh, really? How much did you end up using?
I used, I think, like 2.5 bottles of the royal blue. And the reason it kind of sticks out to me as a lot is I dyed my Hannah Alexander Sophie with like one thing a super pink and then one a purple.
Yeah.
So now it was more chiffon. So I don't know if because of the change in fabric, it was absorbing the color faster, and using it up in the dye bath or what.
Good question.
But yeah, it took a lot more bottles than I anticipated because I was like, all right, I got my bottle of this, and then depending on how it swings, I have, whatever's left over from other things to try.
Right.
So, yeah. But it worked.
I say that would be an interesting thing to test out at some point is, the color soak versus the fabric type.
Yeah, well, because different fabrics, especially depending on your content, will absorb it different. So, like this, I had to use Rit dye more just because it was a synthetic fabric. But, I mean, your synthetic fabrics are slightly different depending on the composition of them. Like my lining fabric here, which I forgot to mention, but yeah, the skirt is fully lined. It is the whatever polyester lining from Fabric Wholesale Direct because I bought a lot of it previously because I like lining my stuff, and it's lightweight, so it wasn't going to distort the shape of the skirt. I'd still have plenty of drape. That was one of the concerns, was not screwing with the drape of the fabric.
Right, yeah, especially for the design, yeah.
Yeah, so that, it definitely swung more like a royal blue than some of the other stuff. It didn't really take that extra little swing to like correct some of the color that I used the Kentucky blue for, but it didn't nearly absorb the dye quite as well as the rest of the fabric. Like even the satin took it better.
Interesting.
So that was a little bit odd, and I'm gonna have to play some more with that fabric to see what I can do to it to help it absorb dye better.
Yeah.
But it was in that bath. It went through like 2 dye baths at least for me trying to darken all of my fabric the way I wanted it to.
Jesus.
But the main ombres were the skirt and then the sleeves, which you can see draped over the shoulder there, and the center front panel thing.
So much time spent over a pot of almost boiling water.
It gets really hot when you're standing there with a giant pot, which the pot I use is a 24 quart stock pot thing.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
It's whatever HEB had for crawfish season. And when I actually went to check out, the dude was like, "Oh, are you going to be boiling some crawfish?" I was like, "No, I'm dyeing fabric, and only fabric. It's all this pot is used for." He was just kind of like, "All right, I like crawfish." So, but yeah, next.
All right.
Should be more skirt stuff, I believe.
Yes, more skirt. Yes.
All right, I'm just waiting for it to pop up on the stream so I can see exactly the image. Maybe.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is showing the layers after the dye process and after I hemmed stuff, I believe. Yes, both of those are hemmed. So, yeah, the satin was already kind of loose, so I didn't have to worry too much about the color. I just wanted to get a little bit of the ombre in there. And she did note in her back details that it could be a solid block color skirt. Again, I was trying to use what I had. So that's why I was like, well, I don't want it to stick out if the skirt flies up too much with it being a way different color of blue. And so that was after it was hemmed with the lining fabric and, you know, all your snips so that it would sit nice and flat, hopefully. And then the second image is the main outer skirt on top of that skirt after it was hemmed, which the hemming was just done using my serger. I did a 3-thread rolled hem. However you want to define that, I don't know. Yeah, I think generally your rolled hems are only done with 1 needle and 3 threads. So.
All right, so let's continue on. And this was one we saw you do quite a bit of work on, was the HTV, to really get those details. Because we know Hannah Alexander is very much about having those kind of details in her work.
Yes. So a lot of thinking went into deciding how I wanted to do these, because, like, back to the lining fabric choice, I didn't want to compromise the drape of the fabric based on whatever I put on top of it. So, because I have embroidery machines, I have 2 of them, actually. None of them you can actually see. There, wait. 1 is there, 2's down there. I only have so much table space. The larger one has to live on the floor, sadly, for now. But as I was thinking about it, I was like, okay, well, with having to do the stabilizer for embroidery and all of that, and all the thread I would be adding to it, how is it gonna drape, right? Mm-hmm. And since it's a circle, I'd have to be careful with it not stretching while it is in the hoop because of the bias. That got canceled out. I was like, there's various points where this could go wrong. Okay, so the next thought was, okay, some people like to make stencils and paint, but then to that I was like, okay, how is the paint going to, like, bend with the fabric depending on how many coats I had to do for it to stick out enough on the fabric? Which, side note, this is the weird thought process. I do a lot of forehand thinking to knock out ideas that don't work so I don't waste time trying them. Some people do this, some don't. It could just be weird physics brain being like, no, we need to thoroughly overthink every single thing before we do it. But it does help. So there were 2 things I didn't have to test. Mm-hmm. The next thing was, okay, I could use heat transfer vinyl. I was like, all right, that should be fine. It's lightweight. And the last option, which this was an option I thought about before dyeing everything, was, did I want to buy fabric? Because Cosplay went ahead and made Hannah Alexander's Sophie design and put her fabrics that she designed up on Spoonflyer. So you can buy the stuff pre-printed with the ombres, but I wanted to have more control over how my ombre looked in the patterning than that would offer. So that left heat transfer vinyl as my option, which I thought very long and hard about what I would use for the heat transfer vinyl. Because you have glitter vinyl, holographic vinyl, matte vinyl. I didn't use any of those because none of those seemed like they would really fit the aesthetic. Yeah. Glitter would stick out too much. Metallic would stick out too much. Mm-hmm. And the matte, I think, would be too flat. So what I ended up going with, which, can I peel this up from this maybe? Okay, so it is like kind of like a soft matte-ish metallic.
Okay.
Right? And what really sold me on this is, I think they call it like chameleon vinyl in the Amazon listing, but it is blue, purple, color shifty. And so I thought that would complement the blue and the pink very well. All right, I didn't have to pick one color, I could have 2. Mm-hmm. So, you didn't put the one image in here of the design space, but that's okay.
Yeah. I
went ahead and dropped a reference image of the little shapes into the Cricut design space and spent far too long placing little teardrop shapes and dots and whatever other shapes. I think those are the main 2 shapes in there. I just had to change the sizing on them.
Making good, efficient use of your materials.
Yeah.
Cosplay's expensive.
Some people use, like, other vectoring programs. I haven't learned others yet. I am working on it. But so I went with what I knew, which was the Cricut design space. Mm-hmm. Made my 3 different designs. So there is the center front, which in the middle image, it is at the top of the picture. So it's the long one. And then there's the alternating 2. And I think at first I cut, what was it, like 27, and then I needed like 5 more. So 27 of each style, minus the center front. Center front was a single, and that was it. But for the A and B, we can call them 27 of each. And I think I needed 3 of one and 2 of the other, or something like that. So it was a lot of little shapes to trim, weed, and place along a circle. And circles are kind of a pain to try to place something to where it's pointing towards the middle.
Well,
So
I was noticing you had the measuring tape there, and say, were
yes.
you like trying to, or very much also measuring to make them equidistant?
Yes, so what I did, and I actually did the same thing on Zelda, is I tackled it quarter at a time. So here I folded to where you could see center front, and I put a pin. And then I eventually placed the center front design, and I decided, what was it? It might have been like 5 inches and a little bit, or whatever it was.
Okay.
I kind of measured along and divided roughly how many shapes I thought I would need there.
Okay.
To come up with the spacing. And so I marked where the center of each design would go, and then went back, pinned on in a couple of spots, because the transfer paper stuff, the clear stuff, is kind of sticky, but it's not sticky enough to where I could move the skirt around and it wouldn't go flying off. So I generally add like 3 or 4 pins to help hold it in place while I'm figuring out placement. Some of them I did have to go back and change when I pinned it up on my dress form to see if everything was fairly straight. So that was the challenge with circle, is when it's vertical, you want all of those to appear that they're going straight. So that was a little fiddly. But it ended up working out between going from the floor when I was working on a quarter at a time, putting it up on my dress form, taking a step back, looking at it. Are they all going the right way? Maybe slightly tweaking the angle on some of them. And then for the center back, I actually had a seam there, so it made it a little easier than the center front. I just shifted what half I was working on, or what quarter. Which, note about this skirt. So it is a full circle that was made with a like 10-inch radius, so it's more than double what I actually needed for my waist, but that way I could gather it down. So 2 halves, 1 shorter, 1 longer, that I kind of angled to make them match.
Okay. Well, and actually,
I forgot that I didn't mention the patterning bit.
Yeah, you mentioned it in the book, but
yeah. So circle skirts are fun. Tape measure, just
and actually
measure, drop a pin, measure, drop a pin, and then step.
Well, and actually, one thing I was going to mention, because you kind of only touched upon this in the build book, but was actually adding all the rhinestones.
Oh yeah, so
because if
did you add the photo, or no? I don't think you added.
There wasn't
a
photo.
photo.
Yeah.
No. Oh, I thought I had clicked it to upload. Okay.
But that was fun, because if you've seen her streams where she worked,
I did a lot
Sophie,
of rhinestoning.
Yeah. Well, and one thing I wanted to point out was, because I know you always think about your rhinestone shapes, and that was very much obvious while working on Sophie. You really thought through what shapes, what colors, where I want to place them. But what was kind of interesting was just partway through, you're like, I want to try something to see if this makes it easier.
Well, that was actually in the beginning.
Rhinestones. So
that was the first rhinestone stream, which is actually when I started rhinestoning the skirt.
Yeah, because before, like, you were using a heat pen, correct? I mean, on other costumes.
Yeah, so like on Zelda, I used a hotfix tool, so just 1 by 1, but hers was a scatter of them up the skirt, so it worked well to do it that way. For Belle, the rhinestones on that, I actually ended up using my easy press or was it my iron?
I think I don't think you used the easy press on Belle.
Okay, maybe it was just my iron, because I thought it was going to be, because I have a large easy press. I don't know if it's 10 by 10 or 12 by 12, but it's a large one. We're going to chalk it up to that. It's not the mini one. So for Belle, because there's these circles and scallops, there's like 6 of them along the lace, and for that, to make it go a little faster, I pinned stuff on, dropped rhinestones, heated it, shift, heat. For this, at first, because of wanting the exact placements, so unlike Zelda, this was very precise. There was a pattern to the rhinestones. I wanted, a circle of 8 of them around this dot here. For the swoosh, I wanted roughly this, but, depending on how that distance slightly changed. But yeah, so lots of precision-ish with the rhinestones. I say ish because I didn't like have a template, but I tried to keep a couple of rules of thumb. So like, okay, the circle is going to have 6 like this, and this swoosh here, I'm going to do 3 large ones, these 2 going this way, and then 6 going this way, right? So I just had a few rules that I kind of set to keep it somewhat consistent.
Right.
But when I was trying to use my hotfix tool, because the one I have is not just a metal tip, it actually has like this little wax-coated cord thing in it, so that's great for grabbing rhinestones. However, it's grabbing the rhinestone, and the rhinestone can kind of stick to it.
Yeah.
Which here, after laying out my rhinestones, and I pulled it up after hitting one, they all shifted. And I had to go back and replace all of them. Did another rhinestone. They shifted. Had to go back, move them, and that's when I was like, okay, you know what? This is a large enough area that I'm doing this on. I'm already using my Easy Press mat. Why don't I just use my Easy Press?
Right, yeah.
So I used some extra of that clear transfer tape stuff, and then the paper that comes with your heat transfer vinyl to protect it. So I stacked those 2. That way I was not directly heating on vinyl or the rhinestones to avoid melting and burning things. Yay. Held that down for 10, 15 seconds. Let it beat. Pulled it up. Rhinestones pressed on well enough. Sometimes I'd have to do it again. But for the most part, that worked well, and it did speed up the process.
Yeah, it really did, because you that was like a lot of your streams for some of it. It was just like place.
Yeah, the
place,
first couple
place,
of crafty
place,
streams were
press.
just rhinestoning.
Yes, but it worked. It worked really well, though. I mean, it's definitely another technique you can use in the future for pieces that need that many rhinestones in a particular place over the whole thing. All right.
Yeah,
so
and then the waistband is just your standard rectangular waistband, which, similar to the corset, the underside of it, I did hand sew that down. I've just gotten to where I'm like, it's a strip thing. We should do some hand sewing instead of having stitching there. Because again, I've been thoroughly corrupted by Wig Small and Wig Cosplay. Yay. Also, Kate did the math and did pipe in about, pretty sure it's a physicist, thanking us about the thoroughly overthinking everything, because Merkitty is a fellow physicist.
Yes.
And did some math and gathered it down. Yeah. All right. Next up.
So let's move forward. So we're actually working on the bodice here. And you actually had a different photo, but thankfully you put this one in, was doing a mock-up at the start.
Yes. Which, let me double check my sticker thing, because I believe I did get a question about this. Because I put a sticker on Instagram just to see if there were any Sophie questions, and the one I saw earlier was related to the patterning of the bodice. Okay, yeah. Tackling that. So, for some things when I sew, like circle skirts, I'll just sit out on the floor, use my tape measure, and pin. Some shirts and stuff like that, I can do that flat. But when it comes to something where I'm wearing it over a corset, because that is changing my standard shape some.
Right.
Well, not some, it depends on the style, because, just kind of like squishes stuff to sit slightly differently and create a more flattering look. This was one of those cases where I had a corset because my normal body shape was not like that. It's, your more hourglassy look. Mm-hmm. So to make sure that I had that all sitting properly, I did the good old cling wrap and duct tape method. I actually had to do this twice. The first round when I did it, yes. I wasn't too happy with how some of the lines were sitting, how I drew it on myself when I did the mock-up for it. So then I scrapped that pattern, asked my mom to help me retape and repattern. She could set the tape down better so it was smoother and get a better overall fit. And then she marked some of the lines because it's like, okay, yeah, I want one line here and I want it to kind of connect here, and then down here do this. So then I would go back and connect those lines that we made.
Okay.
Which that worked a lot better. So yes, you can do this patterning method by yourself, but sometimes, especially when it comes to doing the back, it will be easier if you have help.
Yeah, very much so.
Because that's where I had some of the patterning issues with the first mock-up that I was not happy with, is how the curved seams on the back were sitting.
Yes, and Merkitty, you're correct. That I've seen so many cosplayers will just use that method, and damn does it work.
Well, I mean, you can use it for stretch fabrics, you can use it for non-stretchy fabrics.
Yeah.
So, And then the sleeves, to do those, I flipped through a few of my Pattern of Fashion books. So those are historical patterns that you can actually see the pattern shapes for, and then mixed in with the pattern, they have instructions on this grid. So if you really wanted to, you could take it, blow it up, and actually try to make that pattern for yourself. But I flipped through these books just to get an idea for your Victorian-ish inspired costume, because I didn't mention this in the planning, but when I looked at her silhouette, I was like, yes, this is like late Victorian, maybe a little Edwardian look. I want to incorporate some historical elements, thus the undergarments. But for the sleeves, I was kind of looking at it. Some of them were a bit too large, so I didn't want to do what weird things they did, but I just went for a standard big old gathered sleeve down. So, yeah. Which I did my good old not hand gathering method for this, where you're just zigzagging over I think, like I said, it's like crochet yarn thread stuff thing.
Really?
I don't know. I've gotten it at a thrift store, and I have a couple of these things, and I haven't ran out yet, so I haven't actually had to go buy it new. Thrifting. It's great for cosplay. And then the lower part of the sleeve, so you can't really tell here, but it does have a little point on the hand. So for that, I cling wrapped the lower half of my arm to roughly draw out the shape, because if you do this, it's not just like a straight triangle on that sleeve. You're going to have like curve where it's shifted slightly over to one side more than the other. So that point is not dead center. And that's just, with the curvature of your hand and how it's shaped. So that's why I decided cling wrapping and starting with the mock-up process that way was better. Which from this, there were a few alterations to make with how it sat right here on my hand.
Yeah.
So yes, test those a lot. I did not decide to do the little finger loop because I was like, it doesn't really necessarily have to stick there. So, in some cases, you might want to add the finger loop so it holds. Okay. Be easier more so like with stretch fabrics.
Yeah.
Which I actually don't think I have a photo for this, so I might as well mention it now. One thing I did include was, so the way it's sewn is it goes like around here, down here, back up. And then I have some hook and eye to hold it together. That way, again, it's like putting it on, that makes it easier so I can have it fit tighter on my wrist, but still be able to take my hand through, right?
Right.
Because you can fit your wrist, but not be able to get your hand through. But with that opening, you can then take your hand out as you please. Or if you're in Texas, you can undo it and push your sleeve up and not melt quite as much. It helps a little bit. You're still going to be melting in something like this in Texas, but the little things that count.
Especially during con season, dear God almighty.
Yes, it was, Akon was hot, but I'm glad it wasn't the weekend after, because it was even hotter the weekend after. God. And I was like, I was already melting in this. I would have, really melted if it was the weekend after. Or heck, this weekend. We're having a cold front on Monday. Our high is still going to be 95. And that says something about our current weather. We've been above 100 for our highs for over the last week. Yay!
I'm just always
and humidity.
Yeah, I'm just always reminded of the weatherman from Family Guy. You're gonna have swamp ass. Yeah. All right, so let's continue on here.
And Mercury actually does make a good point. Yes, especially in polyester stuff, because it's not quite as breathable as your natural fibers. But
yeah, I was gonna say there's actually a costume I have. That I haven't worn yet because it's mostly polyester. I ain't wearing that during the Texas Con.
I will note for some of these things. Actually, can you go back? We're not done with that last image yet.
Okay, yeah, go for it.
That sometimes cleaning and maintenance on the polyester stuff can be easier than your natural fibers. So silk, you have to be very careful with wearing it and having it not directly on your skin, because the oils on your skin can damage it. So that's why, for corsets, you really should wear, even if it's just a tank top under it, one, because it's not good for the corset to be directly on you for all of the corset, but especially if you have silk, because then that fabric is absorbing different oils from your skin and it can damage it. So yeah, the more you know. Middle image here was the centerpiece thing, and then the ombre dip chiffon layer I was putting over it. So I just kind of roughly cut a piece of fabric I knew would fit over the pattern piece, and went to dip dye town on that when I was doing the fabric. So here I was kind of figuring out, okay, roughly where do I want this on the bodice? once that was done, I basted all of the bodice pieces to a strength fabric I just had on hand. So that is not cotton coutil. It's whatever came out of one of my bins. But it was strong enough and it didn't have stretch. So it met the check marks. Again, serged everything, and for a lot of the seams, which you don't actually see in this image, and I don't think you see in any of the images I actually took, is on the back, there's all the seams there are curved. So like it goes from your hip to the bottom, from under your armpit to the bottom, and then like from mid-shoulder blade to the bottom. So lots of curves. I had to do snipping to make sure that it would iron and sit nice and flat. Now we can go on.
Okay.
All right, which should be the design process for the bodice. So for this, again, since I don't use fancy programs for creating my heat transfer designs.
What are fancy programs?
Your fancy vectoring programs where you're doing it all digitally.
So what Kirsten.
I did is I took some paper and lined up my center front piece on it, traced that shape out, which I did it in pencil, so in this picture you can barely see the lines, but
I saw it when I was putting this together, I barely saw it.
So that way I was starting with something that should be at the same size as what it's going to go on. And I just kind of drew out roughly what it looked like from the images I had. And as you can see, I placed some of the sew-on rhinestones I had to be like, okay, well, if I put this here and here, spacing needs to be like this. Anyways, when that was all done, I just used a scanning app on my phone. And
technology!
Yes. So there I was smart. Because the scanning app, the way it pops up is like to scan an image is you have 4 points you can adjust, right? Mm-hmm. So even if your camera is at a slight angle and you're taking a photo of this, all right, so if it's at an angle, it's like a trapezoid, no longer a rectangle. But because you can tell it these reference points, it can auto adjust.
Yeah, it just basically it's like the skew. It's like the skew tool in Photoshop. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's to fix the skew so that you don't have to worry so much about how am I holding my phone over this. Then I just dropped it into the design space again, removed the background, sized it based on the measurements I took of that paper itself. So like I knew how long I wanted it roughly. Mm-hmm. Now, when it did come to putting it all on the fabric, it should have had a line down the middle front, but it looked really weird when I had the cut vinyl and I was placing it. So I decided to take those things off. Oh. I might go back and add it, but I don't know. I thought it looked a little weird. Which that was a very stressful placement. The skirt was nowhere near as stressful because I had to try to make it symmetric.
Yeah.
But because of how wide it was and how long, I had to cut it as halves.
Jeez.
Yeah. But, once I finally was happy with the rough positioning, I just used the easy press, put it on, then we were good to go. And so
you just went with it. I mean, sometimes that's what you got to do. I mean. Mm-hmm. All right. And
positioning could have been a little bit better because if you look in a few spots, it's a tiny bit off, but I mean, I know that because I did it and I had it flat to look. When it's on something curved, it's harder to tell.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. So.
Which, as you can tell, it's definitely a very curved piece of fabric when it's doing what it should do. So here you can just see the bodice construction process. So the first image shows after I inserted that panel into the front piece. So in piece 1 into 2 and 2, which doing that point was a little bit stressful because if it looked wonky, you would really know it was wonky because it's right in front, in the middle, and you want a nice clean point. So, that was, slowly basting and doing the clip the corner when your needle is at the point rotating and trying to get all the fabric to behave. It worked. It was just a teeny bit stressful. And then just sewing on the rest of it, which I think this might have been lining number 1. So initially my lining for the bodice was the same as the skirt, but it was doing some weird stretching when I was trying to line it up with the fashion layer of the bodice.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was not sitting right. And it was making it kind of bunch in weird places. Like, it was making the fashion layer bunch. So I scrapped that, and I then decided to use a cotton fabric as my lining. Which, like I said, I think this was with the first lining, but there was that change I had to make. Because the way I finished edges on this, like the sleeves, I sewed together my sleeve and attached it to the fashion fabric, so the blue fabric. And then I took the selvage edge on the seam allowance on the inside, bent it inwards, and took the lining to match it up. That way I could hand sew that shut.
Okay.
And then for the bottom edge, I left that raw because I was hemming it kind of like a corset with bias tape, which here I did use a store-bought one, but it was in my stash, so it was blue. It worked. No one was going to see it. And it was not the gold foil, which I hate. So just got to slide that in there. It was done the same way. However, instead of pulling it to where you would see part of it on the outside, I pulled it all the way. So this, I think, was just a single fold bias tape that I had on hand.
Okay.
And yeah, you rotate it all the way. That way you do not see that from the outside, ideally.
Okay. Right.
And then the boning I used was which one did I go with? I believe I used this synthetic. Oh, that defocused.
Yeah,
synthetic whalebone that I got. It's just a nice plastic, basically. I like it more than the plastic you can buy in the craft store. But it really didn't need something crazy like steel boning in it, because all the heavy duty for shaping is done by the corset.
Yeah.
So it just needs boning to help try to keep it laying smooth.
All right. So,
Onward.
So now we're actually talking about Ponyo.
Yes, Ponyo, yay.
So here we actually have the undergarments that you put together for Ponyo.
Yes, so for undergarments of Ponyo, it's a petticoat, yay! Because one of Lauren's requirements for Ponyo was, I want to be a fluffy cupcake. And I was like, okay.
That's what she said.
Will do. We will make you a cupcake. So for this, I did a 3-tiered, 3-layer petticoat. For the sake of making it match, I decided to use the chiffon for the 2 lower tiers. Well, not just matching. So it would match the fabric used for the dress as well as the sheer layer on mine, because it's the same starting fabric, even if, the dress and my fabric all got dyed. But it also feels a lot nicer on your skin compared to, like, crystal organza. Yeah. So, like, Belle, I used crystal organza, but that was not directly on me. I had bloomers. I had cage.
Yeah, I was going to say, because organza is like...
Sophie had bloomers. Ponyo does, too. She has, like, short little bubbly ones. But I don't think I really took any photos of those.
No, I didn't see it. And I was going to say, yeah, with organza, because it's a little rough.
Yeah, so it's that in-between of chiffon and tulle. So tulle is too much of a net sometimes.
Yeah, it is.
Chiffon is too flimsy. So at crystal organza, you get, like, some of the benefits of each, but it's not as soft as chiffon. So, however, the issue with it being soft is, as you can see, one layer of that didn't really add much fluff. It's just kind of there. All right, so we went 2 yards, 4, and then 8 yards. So it is the standard math for a tiered petticoat. But because chiffon, it's kind of flimsy. It's not foofing. And again, I was told I want to be a cupcake. So to cupcake it, I decided to finally figure out doing a fishing line hem.
Yeah, I was curious about that because I saw in the build book and you've talked about it before, but you never went into detail about what that is exactly.
So, it is your standard fishing line. I'd had this on hand because there was some other costume where I thought I would use it, but I didn't. So I actually had to this time sit down and learn how to use it, which I actually had to learn how to disable the blade on my serger, because this serger, I got it sometime last year.
Right,
and since I got it, I hadn't actually had to mess with the blade, to disable it, so to disengage it. So that was fun. Because at first I was like, do I have to take it off? And then I realized, no, I just need to, pull and rotate.
Ah, okay.
Yeah,
So why?
I'm someone who doesn't necessarily read the manual.
Well, I was gonna say, so why exactly do you have to do that for using fishing line? Just
So
for people who don't know.
yeah, so the issue if you don't disengage your blade is you can slice your fishing line in the process of putting it on. Because what you're doing is a rolled hem, but between like so if you're using your rightmost needle like you should for a rolled hem, between that needle and the edge is where you want to guide your fishing line in.
Okay.
So if you have your blade right on the other side, so needle here, blade here, you have a very small space. If you go over too much, you cut it.
Okay.
And then what? Are you going to restart your fishing line hem and go back to the beginning? Or are you going to like try to feed it through and then start from where you were? It'd be a pain. So turn off the blade, and then this gets wrapped in it, which this is 50-pound fishing line. Comes in a 150-yard roll. It's a lot of fishing line.
Yeah, it's probably like $4 at Walmart,
Yeah, I did get it at Walmart. It was cheap. Tape to hold it on because otherwise it goes and makes a mess.
Yeah.
So tape it back.
I've used it for props before to hold up stuff. So yeah, definitely know that bit. So
and as you can see between these pictures, it made a big difference because that is just one layer of our petticoat. Mixed up.
All right. So this was actually also you dyeing the dress, and
I'm waiting for it to swap.
Oh,
as I get some tea.
Yeah, but also very similar technique to what you used for Sophie.
Yes. So I just used some whatever they call their orange shade of Rit Dye More. I don't remember what it's called.
Yeah, it was like kind of an odd name from what I remember.
Whatever it is. Just, did your slowly dunking in and out to get a nice ombre in there, which the trick to the smooth ombre is just a slow dunking. Don't let it sit and then pull it up, because that's how you get the lines. So if you want lines, let it sit in between, but if not, you want a continuous smooth motion.
Yeah.
In the middle here, you can see how it looked before any of the dyeing, and also, this is with all 3 layers of our petticoat. I just kind of like pinned it down to roughly fit on the mannequin, and then the after dyeing, same thing, pinned to the mannequin over the petticoat.
All right, and then continue on. Yet more of the extra with the HTV.
Yes, Ponyo also has lots of cute little designs. For this, which I will talk about both the heat transfer vinyl here, and the hemming, because I apparently didn't give you images for that.
No, you didn't.
So yeah, I guess we'll go.
Or you didn't really talk about in the build book, because that's what I went off of. Or you just didn't text and no photos.
It got mentioned during judging, though. During judging, because I was going through a blurb, asked a question, asked another question, and then Squirrel Brain Kirsten is just all over the place. As you know from our Genshin nights, I get distracted. Especially when there's treasure involved. Spending 30 minutes trying to find a chest.
Trying to find that stupid geocolumn, but anyway.
Hey, I did find it. But it's not connected to those 3. It's its own thing. Anyway. But okay. So for the dress, for the hem on this, in the artwork, it shows an orange strip. And to add a little bit more body and flow to the top, I decided, I'm going to hem it using another rolled hem with fishing line. Mm-hmm. And what I didn't mention before is, actually, I dyed the lining fabric, so this is the return of that skirt fabric, the lining there.
Okay.
So this is, 2 gigantic rectangles of fabric so I took, 4 yards, 2 yards hacked it in half to make a 4-yard long strip. And I used French seams to join it, and that is what got folded, dyed for both the chiffon as well as the lining fabric, and I kept them separated just to make sure that it would still twirl and flow nicely instead of being bogged down and not swooshing the way I wanted it to swoosh. That's not good terms for it, but I think you get what I'm meaning.
Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. So yeah, I wanted it to be able to the chiffon to float freely. Okay. So both layers got hemmed using a rolled hem and fishing line with an orange serging thread. And then the designs on the skirt are a gold foil heat transfer vinyl, which for these, I did a pretty similar thing to the front bodice thing. I drew out the designs based on what she had, because she hand draws them, so they're not exactly symmetrical. So what I did is I kind of went through, figured out the ratios for the sizes I wanted, drew half of it, flipped it over, did the other half, scanned the image, cut it. Yeah. Again, would be easier using technology for that, but haven't quite learned how to use the vectoring programs yet. It is the key word.
One day we'll make you learn Adobe Illustrator. I don't know.
There's also the heat transfer design on the top, which is like, so it goes around a rhinestone, and then there's some like red rhinestones added for the trim. But for the design itself, I decided to use 3 different colors of heat transfer vinyl. So there is a blue one, which is like the leafy looking things, a red one, and then like a maroon one, which I think the middle image is the maroon one, and the red one are like the little side fingers. I think I'd have to go double check, but I'm fairly certain that's what it was. And these were done in the design space just with a reference image and me, you know, dragging shapes and squishing them and being like, this looks about right. But what I had to do then was cut one of each piece for each thing and kind of pre-position them so that they were right. So when I went to go put them all on my matte satin band, they were like similar position, not, oh, well, here are the leafy bits like this, and the next one it's like that.
Right? Yeah.
So that took a while to pin all of those. Fusion can do some vector stuff. It's just a little weird. So in some cases for me, it's faster just to do it by hand.
Go with what you know, right?
Yeah. Because I did do that, actually, for Hannah Alexander's Zelda stuff.
All right, so let's move on here. And this is actually... And let's actually talk about Ponyo's wig. But then you didn't actually have anything in the build book about Sophie's wig. So let's talk about Ponyo's first.
That's because I was bad and styled it before the contest. Well, not like the day of, but like I did it when we got up to Dallas.
Okay, so
this is something I didn't have to do at home.
Okay, so let's talk about Ponyo first. You know, and our favorite, Arda.
Yes, you know. Arda wigs. By the time I went around to make my build book, they had discontinued the wig I used, which I bought it because it was on sale. So when I went to go grab images, they no longer had it in the right color.
They got rid of the peach, or what was it? Because they still have the Ferrari, but just not the color?
Yeah, not in peach. So the wig style I used is that green one, but the color is peach, which is the very tips of the wigs and tips of the bang. So using the actual same dye bath as the dress and lining fabric, I just kind of held the bottom of the wig, held the bangs, and went to town dunking.
Bloop, bloop, bloop. Yeah. Well, and actually, you have her wig there, because you didn't talk about styling in the build book either.
Yes. So, because I did that again later when Lauren was actually forced to listen to me and give me feedback.
Yeah.
So, she couldn't hide from me when we were in the hotel room.
She was
works
trapped.
A lot, okay?
She was trapped.
But funny thing you might laugh at this point when my mom saw this wig shoot, because she saw it laying flat with this dye job, and she was just like, it looks like a mullet. How is it possible? Look good on Lauren. Well, it came out really nice, I think. So the styling, which when you see the final images, then I can actually grab the wig, but the colors are going to look awful on this camera.
Yeah, I was going to say.
A warning.
Yeah, I was going to say.
We tried it earlier.
The image you see here is actually a lot better.
Yeah, the image has better coloring, but I can show the style. But
yeah, actually
quick, I'll pull it over.
Yeah, actually, and I'll pop.
This is with the flower crown. So I did trim some of the length on this wig, and then using heated curlers, I rolled them up, clipped them in place, put a bag over it, and held my steamer underneath just to make sure I could really get the spirals to set, which is why, like, I have to do a little bit of brushing before she wears it again, but for the most part, I don't have to do much restyling. Maybe a little hairspraying on the bangs, which, when I was doing this, again, when Lauren was forced to give me feedback because she was not working or sleeping, she had to answer me. And I was talking about the bangs. I was like, I feel like I should do Ariel style foofy bangs, which it's not sitting quite right, but because she likes the Little Mermaid, and we thought that would frame the face nicely. And you can see the
Yeah.
ombres here, which, yeah, it's the cute little not mullet looking curled bob-ish thing.
Yes, it definitely worked there. So actually, so since we talked about Ponyo, let's talk about Sophie because you actually have her wig right behind you.
Yeah, so this
And that was
is,
not in the
oh
build
boy.
book.
Which this is, trying to remember this. It's not the Venus, not the Aurora. I think it's the Luthien or whatever. I think it's that one because it started so it's their long curly wig with bangs.
Yeah, I think that's Luthien, yeah.
Yeah, so it should be that one. Oh, it's not in frame. We'll just put it in front of me. So luckily her hairstyle is pretty simple. So braided it, put a thing on. I made ribbon out of a cute red damask-ish fabric I found at, you guessed it, a thrift store. I like thrifting things for cosplay when I can. The main thing on this was trimming the bangs because all the bangs went to like here. So on me, that would have been, down here. I would have been like Cousin It.
You would look like Shirley from King of Fighters.
Yeah. This is silver, not white, because white tends to look really weird with pretty much any skin tone. Silver is a little bit better, especially when you're pasty like me and it just washes you out more.
I mean, we did talk about that when we shot your other Sophie.
So my other Sophie, my yellow dress Sophie, it's the same color of wig. It is just a short version, which for this, she said you could use a short wig like how she would have in the movie.
Right.
But she really likes drawing braids, so she drew the main image with a braid, and I was like, ooh, we'll use a braid. So the main thing on this was trimming and feathering the bangs, which, it was... I have a sized wig head here. It's one of the canvas ones. I got it on Amazon. So I kind of just went from, okay, so the center of the wig would sit here on me. I want the bangs to sit kind of here, but not too far, because then it'd be in my eyes, and plastic in your eyes isn't fun.
No.
So yeah, I did like a rough cut. Then I went through with my thinning shears like this to feather it, which I did realize in some photos, it doesn't quite catch the feathering well. And I wonder if it's just because of the color of the wig. When there's just a couple of strands, it doesn't catch it nicely.
Yeah, and I was going to say that, and probably with your skin tone.
Maybe
the reflection, especially because like you were shooting in harsh sunlight.
Yeah,
and once you show some of the photos later,
the feathering more so than in others. Which one other thing I might do is add like some more clips to it, because I did put like 2 bobby pins in this, but I didn't put a lot of bobby pins. But with taking my hat off and back on, I slid the wig back a little bit over the day. So yeah, if you wear a hat with your costume, just put some extra pins in it to be safe.
Yeah.
And yeah, so since the braid was on this side and she had like some extra hair bits over here, I trimmed one section a little shorter and left it nice and curly on that side, just to balance it. And I might as well mention this now, because this also was not in the book, was my hat.
Well, you kind of did, and I actually I'm going to talk about that.
Well, I showed the supplies.
Yeah.
Okay, we have an image for that. Never mind.
Yeah,
Returning her back around, and she will return.
Yeah. So actually, we'll kind of talk about like some of the other smaller pieces. So, because we're still on Ponyo,
yes, we are.
The bits about her necklace.
So this is actually kind of funny how this came about. I was actually chatting with some cosplay friends in Discord, and suddenly was like, wait, I haven't made the pendant yet. Let me go to Fusion 360. So after that point, within 5-10 minutes, I was able to whip up the design for the pendant. And then, so for Christmas, I had gotten a Photon Mono resin printer. And for those of you who don't know, resin printers use a way smaller layer height compared to an FDM printer. So that's going to be your ones that use ABS or PLA. So you can get far finer detail, and it also means there's less finishing work required. And, like, the clear is better than clear PLA, in my opinion. Yeah. Which I will explain why I chose clear in a moment. But yeah, layer height-wise, this is probably 50 or 45 micron. So micron is very small. That is times 10 to the negative 6 meters. Tiny. Very tiny.
Very, very much better resolution than most what you get with FDM printers. So.
Yeah, so your resolution just depends on the resolution of your screen that you have. So they do have some that are 4K, 6K. Is that the bathroom tub? No, we'll talk about what that is in that.
I know what it is. So
yeah, because he's actually going to get a resin printer, and this is the wash and cure station that Rob is going to get.
Yes.
Because I got a larger printer and a larger wash and cure. So this is actually the first time I used my Wash and Cure Plus, or whatever the one for the Photon Mono X, so that's the next size up of a resin printer from them, to clean it. But yeah, backtracking, I used clear resin to make it a little bit easier, because then for finishing the gem, we'd sand it down, make it nice and smooth, and I could throw paint or nail polish on the back of it. Right? On the other hand, I could have also dyed my clear resin in the vat, which I've done before for some Genshin stuff, which eventually we'll talk about the Genshin stuff, because I have a whole bunch of stuff I resin printed for that, and that was a lot of the trial and error in learning how to resin printer. There is a learning curve.
As if we don't have enough Genshin stuff to talk about in general, so.
Now we're actually going to talk about Genshin cosplays eventually. But yeah, so for here, I decided I'd just paint the back of the gem rather than tinting my resin. And just to save time, I went ahead and printed the base piece out of it as well. So the middle image is me taking it out of the wash and cure. And whenever you're handling anything with partially uncured resin, you need to be wearing gloves. So when you pull it out of your vat, which the reason I had this image in here, but it didn't get selected for this, was when it was on the build plate, you'll see that there's resin dripping off of it. Yeah. So, because as it's doing in the vat and it's pulling up and going back down and getting more, it's basically like a slimy layer of resin on your final product. So that's why you need to take it and put it in a wash portion of your wash and cure. So you rinse off all of your excess resin in an IPA bath. So that is isopropyl alcohol. Then after that, you can pop it off of the supports. Swap your wash and cure into cure mode. So you're going to take that tank off, put on a reflecting piece, put on your rotation plate, set those suckers on there. It doesn't take very long for your clear resin pieces to cure. If you over-cure it, it will yellow over time.
Okay.
Like even more so, like your clear resin will yellow. If you leave it too long in your wash and cure, under your UV light, it will yellow. Some people correct for this by adding a little bit of blue ink into their resin. Oh. Right, because if it's blue and then it yellows a little bit.
Yeah, it's like correct to blue. Yeah, correct to blue, correct to orange gels for lighting. Yeah.
It's like that. For here, I didn't mess with that because I was like, it's going to be red and I'm spray painting the other gold. It's fine.
Yeah.
Now, this next image, I can't tell. Wait, no, okay. That I think is before sanding. And I can tell you that. So if you look closely, you see like the little dots through the pieces. And that's the little indents or whatever you want to call it, left over from the supports when I pulled them off. So what I did, or well, what I had Lauren do, because I didn't do the sanding, yay, is we started with like a 200 grit sandpaper, sanded down the back to remove any excess or little divots caused by the supports. And then on the tops, I had her start with, I think 300 grit wet sandpaper, and then we upped it to, I think, around like 600.
Okay.
You can go higher. Like if I wanted this to be crystal clear, I would go all the way up to like 5,000 grit sandpaper, which I have done. But that is something for the Genshin vision talk, whatever I talk about, making some visions for Genshin characters. And if you do that, like you have something clear that you could easily look through.
Yeah.
But we didn't need to go that excessive for this. It got clear enough that you'd be able to see the sparkly nail polish behind it. It was fine. And then the base piece, like I mentioned earlier, I just spray painted that gold afterwards. And then I took both pieces and coated them with a UV resistant clear coat. So even though I did all that sanding to smooth it so my paint would go on nicely, the UV coat will help prevent any excess yellowing or like too much UV light to your resin. You didn't necessarily have to do that for the painted piece, but
Once again,
protected.
con season in Texas.
That. So, right, some people have had like their resin things, even just resin you have casted yellow far too much to where they don't want to use it just because of your ambient light.
Yeah.
So our atmosphere does block a lot of UV rays, but not all of it.
Nope. Not at all. So,
all right.
So let's actually move. This was kind of a mixed thing where we talk about the flower crown for Ponyo and the hat for Sophie, which.
Or not mullet.
Not mullet.
No, not mullet. That's how I'm going to have to call Ponyo's wig. Because it was after Akon where my mom said at first she thought it was a mullet and that it was going to look horrible. And then afterwards she was like, but it came out so cute.
Mermaid mullet.
Yeah. So her flower crown, I used just a floral wire. So it's slightly wider wire. I don't know what gauge it was. I don't remember.
I'm familiar with floral wire, yeah.
It's a very easy one to bend, and it is a softer wire. So then we had floral tape, and not in that image is a finer floral wire. So it was a thin green one. And what we did is we took a section. I kind of made a rough circular-ish shape, handed it to Lauren, said adjust this to fit your head, because your head, a circle is going to look weird on your head. Your head is not exactly circular. Right. I mean, my example circle here, some steel boating, would sit weird. It squishes when I put it on, even over a headset. So yeah, not quite circular. If anything, it's a little bit more of an ellipse to fit your head better. So that's why I had to have her put it on, just to make sure it would be flattering shape for her. So once that was done, we took the base, wrapped it, which you can't quite see it too well. You can see the green, but we wrapped it in the floral wire. And I think at this point she might have added a bit of the green floral wire just to make it sturdy. I don't know. I wasn't watching her during all this process. So. Whatever she did worked.
Yeah.
And then for the flowers, the ones that had longer stems, what we did is we put some hot glue and then floral tape, or a mixture of tape and wire. But I think it was mostly the tape she used, because we live in Texas. Hot glue, even if it is the high temp hot glue, can get compromised in the summer. So glue and tape to help hold it.
Okay.
And that all the way around, which most of these flowers actually were something from a thrift store, because I got these two, actually all of the ones on Sophie's were thrifted flowers. The only things we went and bought for Ponyo's was the Hawaiian-y look ones, because when we were finishing it up, we were kind of I don't think sunflowers quite suit her right. So we wanted something a little bit more,
more
tropical,
yeah.
Which is how we ended up getting these flowers. Off the top of my head, I am not sure what species of flowers it is, but if you know the species of flower, please let me know. I'm looking at you, Merkitty. You're the person I know who might know.
I was going to say, in places like Joanne, some of their fake flower sections are really good about having those kind of selections.
Yes, so we went to... Was it a Joann's? Was it a Michael's? I think it was. Yeah, it was a Michael's, I believe, that we went to. Yeah, it was Michael's, because they had the weird checkout. Us trying to use the self-checkout at Michael's was hilarious.
Wait a minute, they have self-checkouts now? What?
Yeah, okay, so these are hibiscus. Yeah, so they had one screen that was self-check, but we were trying to use my reward stuff for my coupon.
Oh.
And it was scanning really weird, and at one point it kind of froze, and we had to back out and rescan the flowers. Well, because we waited for a few minutes, too, before backing out, and there was no one to come and help. So we're like, fine, we'll just do this. Like I said, it was laughable.
Okay.
But yeah, so we only had to buy the orangish ones and the yellow ones. The rest were thrifted things. Yeah. And it came out very cute. Though I do think I might do a little bit of touch-up work to hold some down a hair better, just because Texas.
Yeah.
Each not friendly with
and apparently you know too much about Merkitty. Just saying.
Well, I mean, we did suffer through getting physics degrees together. We spent a lot of time,
I mean, there is that
ranting about formulas and crap and other things.
So, was there much different for doing Sophie's hat with the flowers she had?
So for this, which can you pull the image up real quick so I can reference that
I'll go
briefly.
back to that. Yeah.
I'm waiting for it to pop up.
Well, I already did, so just talk about it.
Okay,
so.
yeah, I'm just waiting on the delay. Okay, so this hat, as you can see, originally had a black ribbon and it had a bow in the back, but it wasn't a real bow. They cheated, and so they had the rectangle that went around, a rectangle for that part of the bow, and then 2 rectangles for the drapey bits of the bow.
Wow.
It was weird. Yeah. I was like,
that is lazy
would it have been
as
easier
shit.
just to do a bow? Yeah,
That
and then they
lazy
had
as
the little
hell.
knot piece.
Good Lord.
So I pulled that off, and you can see here the rectangle of that slight damask print red fabric, which this is not fire engine red, I promise.
No, it's definitely not. It's
not.
Like if you look at the photo, it's closer. Yeah.
It's the challenge of webcam lighting. And then here is my thrifted flower bag. Yay! I think I probably got that at Austin Creative Reuse. It's a good place for crafty needs. So first, after stripping off the weird black ribbon stuff, we went ahead and placed the red ribbon, and because we kind of liked the bow it had going on, we went ahead and crossed it in the back so we had tails hanging off here. All right, and then we just kind of placed some of the red flowers, glued them on with hot glue, which these held well. It bonded very well to the fabric.
Really?
So I don't think I'm too worried about these popping off.
Yeah. Well, and actually one thing I was going to mention was kind of like the asymmetry in the color selection of flowers for the hat. How that actually kind of gives it a little bit more...
Yeah, because you have some that are more maroony, some that are more red. This one's definitely a more red one. And then the mixture of them back there.
Yeah, it just kind of gives it something a little bit more going for it. So... It's stuff like that I've noticed because I'm a weirdo like that. So,
apparently top tier webcams are also not good at showing the colors.
Very true.
What about cameras? If you're like Robin, don't use a webcam.
I'm actually using my Fuji X-T2, and I really probably could do it a little bit more in post on my video, but
He's fancy. I think did I point the right direction?
I don't know.
No, no. Okay, you're above me right now.
Yeah.
Up there. He's fancy.
I just know what I know. I'm like Hanakawa from Monogatari. Anyway, so
next
and
up.
Actually, let's talk about one of the props you made was Calcifer.
Look at his googly eyes. Okay, they're not really googling right now. I don't know why. Okay, if I flick him, they google. So yeah, this was actually a bit of fun to do because he lights up, as you can see, for a little fireball. We need our angry fire spirit. We turn him back off though. There we go. So for this, the return of the Ponyo dye bath. Well, for part of it. The orange was done using Ponyo's dye bath, and here's a sample piece of what we did. I did the dye. I should not be saying we, I. Just because I randomly hacked up some clear Warbler I had, which I was going to use on another project, but when I tried using it for that project, I realized how much a pain in the butt clear Warbler is to work with. It doesn't like sticking it to itself, and it can kind of get too cloudy. And
yeah, I was going to say, I was wondering about that because I know clear, Transport, if you mesh it around enough, it does get cloudy. So I was kind of wondering about how you utilized it. Yeah.
So what I did here, for dyeing the yellow, I just kind of folded it in half, did a little bit of an ombre, and then for the orange, did it the other way to create various strips like this. Some of them I didn't do the double-ended. I mixed it up around some because I didn't know if some of the pieces would wrap around for the base couple of pieces just to help cover the bottom more, and then have some smaller individual ones, which we did end up using a mix of them. Some of them got cut in half. But yeah, so this was just a couple of minutes in Rit Dye More for each color. But again, with me kind of dipping it like this, so you can see the subtle gradient there.
Yeah, I see it here, yeah.
It's not easy to see when my hand's not behind it. But
well, actually, Actually, do that again, because I'll flip to the larger image. So, because you can kind of see it here when Kirsten's not in a very small window.
Ooh. Okay, that should be enough of me showing off the gradient.
Right.
Which, that was a first dying Warbler, because, again, I haven't really used clear Warbler much, because I tried once, it didn't go well, rolled it back up and shoved it in the corner. And it's literally at least 2 years since I looked at it again.
Wow.
Yeah, it's been a while.
So, and then I believe for the inside you used just fairy lights and tulle to kind of...
Well, first, this part, I mean Lauren, I told Lauren, cut me out some flamey bit shapes.
Oh yeah, I remember that, yeah.
And so she was like, fine, okay, so this is an extra piece where you can see it's orange up here, yellow down here. For those of you who may not be aware, which I dropped it, where did it go? Oh, there it is.
Better a piece of Warbler than a needle.
Well, no, a needle my foot would find probably really easily.
That is true. Yes.
So for these, so your flames, the hotter it is, backtrack. Your colder flames are going to be red. Mm-hmm. Your warmer things are going to be like purple, blue. Yeah. So the base of your flame is going to be warmer than the tips, which in this color scheme case means the base needs to be yellow while the top is going to be reddish orange. So that's just me being a physicist and saying I need to do this the correct way and not like flip it.
Well, it's like
because that would bother me, especially as an astrophysicist, that would bother me.
Well, it's the same thing with color temperature. I mean, it's very similar, so.
But yeah, so in our definition, the cold color, so blue, is actually hotter than red when you're looking at things that are burning. Just so you know, so red is cooler.
Yeah.
The yellow, in this case, I shook my desk, is going to be warmer. And what I used for the base of this, which you can't see in here, is half of a clear ornament, and I took some sandpaper, sanded both sides of it, and then I kind of draped that on top of whatever bottle thing I had, and I heated up the different bits of clear Warbler, which the Warbler wouldn't stick to it. I knew that going in, because clear Warbler hates sticking to basically anything, from my understanding.
Yeah.
I'm going to take a drink. I thought I'd take a drink. I was like, I'm going to drink too. Alright, so what I did then is, using the ornament as the base, drape these on once they were heated up, and kind of smushed it some so that I could get it to actually meet the curvature of the ornament.
Right, okay.
And then I kind of kept adding more pieces and building up till I got this shape. So this is not curved due to the ornament. The ornament actually shifts around in here. But thanks to the ornament, it has the right shape so the ornament fits.
Right.
Which the sanding I did also helps diffuse the light. And to further diffuse the light, I took some slightly creamish color tulle. It's what I actually used for the pigtail wraps on Lauren's ESM wig.
Yeah.
And I wrapped it, and as I was wrapping, I embedded in some of the fairy lights, and then kept wrapping and, alternating what I was putting where. And the reason I opted for fairy lights rather than something fancy was just to make it a nice and simple prop that was easy to turn on and off. Because I could have, put in some programmable stuff and, done some cool effects. But I wanted it to be small and easy to handle.
Well, right? And also with fairy lights, assuming some of the ones you got that, run off the, basically watch, or...
Yeah, the coin batteries.
Yeah, the coin batteries. I mean, those are going to be super low voltage, and they're not going to be very high heat. So probably good.
What you run into with an Arduino is you can use your yellowy and red LEDs off low voltage. So if you used your 3 voltage output, you would be fine. You could use some of your other ones. The issue you run into if you want to use other colors is sometimes you're not providing enough to it to actually get that color.
Exactly.
Which is when you would then have to include a power boost thing into your circuit, and you're adding more and taking up more space, and it's going to, But I didn't want to mess with all of that.
Yeah, I was going to say, because you pretty much, for other colors, you need 5 volts at a minimum.
Yeah, so
Because I
because
just
like
messed
I've
out
had
with LED
RGB
tape.
LEDs where I couldn't run them off of what I thought I could run them, or LED
Yeah.
strips especially. Um,
Or the
but
one time, or the
yeah,
one time we were doing something with the pixel stick, and I tried to take the
uh,
power all the way to 5, and all the colors were off. Like, yeah, we found that out.
um, but yeah. So as you saw when I first pulled it out, you just kind of step your hand in there, rotate it, and flip the switch. So it's
Yep,
easy to turn on,
and it's probably like a
and
dollar
it's
on
lightweight.
Amazon.
Well, you buy a pack of them, or well, I guess you could buy one thing of one color. I don't know if you can get one individual. I
Probably
got
not.
like multicolor ones, so there
You
was
got a
I
whole
think 6
shitload.
colors and 2 of each. So I don't
Yeah.
know. Fairy lights will probably return for other things this year, maybe, possibly. I don't know.
Hey, we use
Will
them for
Edelgard
our.
have fairy lights? Maybe she will.
I don't know. We use them for our light painting panels. So
True. Um, Other quick note: once I had the base shape done to make it look more flamey, I just heated up the tips and kind of bent them some because I don't know. He looked too weird with just the like up towards one area, and it was hard to reach in. So bending them made it easier to be able to turn them on, and the final touch was the googly eyes
eyes.
because Calcifer needs eyes.
All right. So I think that's everything we have here.
Oh,
LED wireless. Yeah. Powered using solenoids.
interesting.
Huh. So actually, let's show some of the photos you and Lauren took at Akon from our friend AlphonseMedia.
He's a
And he
great
actually,
photographer.
yeah, he actually knew of this spot. I believe it was not far from the convention venue, correct?
Yeah, so the way it is set up is you have your convention venue on one side. Across from that, you have one of the host hotels. You go on the other side from there. So, caddy corner to the convention center, you have a field. And then directly across, you have another hotel. So, this one was the Texican Court or something like that. I don't know. So, this was actually at the interior part of it. You can see some of the hotel rooms. But we thought it was cute, so we used it.
I mean, why not? I mean, it did make for a very interesting setup for this
Well, I
area.
thought just because of the angling you would get from it, that could work well.
The
And
framing, yeah,
yeah, he went ahead and agreed that would do some nice stuff, so we used
yeah,
it.
and then
So here you see not weirdly colored wig, not mullet looking wig.
yeah, this is what it's supposed to look like, ladies and gentlemen. I
Uh-huh.
mean,
And
not
here's
mullet.
Sophie.
Yeah, I was gonna say, and actually, I'll go back. I went away and went back to Sophie here, and actually, this was one thing we didn't talk about was the umbrella, because we
Yeah.
had actually talked about this about trying to find one that we
Yeah,
felt
so
fit the
during
style.
the sewing process, I was like, yeah, I'm gonna have to bring an umbrella. Do not hide under when we're outside because it's hot in Texas. Surprise. And then we were talking and we were like, wait, why don't I get a lace umbrella? Because then that gives me another prop, not just calcifer, right? And I ended up finding this on Amazon. I went with the ivory umbrella rather than the white one because I was concerned about the separation with the wig. So, like, if for some photos I took my hat off, which I did take my hat off, and I had the umbrella, would it blend too much?
Yeah.
Right? Because, again, even though it is silver, how, based on the lighting, how much separation are you getting? So
Yeah, I
the
was gonna say that
ivory
was.
lace carousel, it's sitting in a suitcase.
Yeah, I was gonna say that was one thing we had talked about in our team chat. And Ryan said something like, "Well, if you get one that's white, you could eventually dye it for something." But these
I don't know.
umbrellas were
I
not
might
very.
leave it. It was
But
like
these,
$30.
yeah, I mean, eventually, if we need one, we'll just get a white one and just go dye it. It's not the first time. So, and then we've got one of you and Lauren together. You know,
Yes, because we needed photos together. Otherwise, my mother would have been mad.
yes, with full costume with the Dallas skyline in the background. So.
This image reminds me what it's hiding. It happened the morning of the convention.
Yeah, and actually, we will talk about that here in a moment.
We'll get to some fun.
Yes. So,
Fun.
and yes, Merkitty, fluffy cupcake.
Yes, see, she's a cupcake. I achieved my goal, and then mine is like flowy Victorian goodness. Well, not quite, because, scandalous that front hem is a little raised.
Oh my God, you can see her ankles.
Well, no, you couldn't with the boots I was wearing.
Well, yeah,
actually.
I know. Yeah.
My cute, not real Victorian boots.
Yeah, exactly. So,
courtesy of Amazon.
So actually, now let's talk about the event where you entered this into the cosplay contest for Akon.
Yes.
And you two got Best in Show.
Yeah, backtracking slightly. Originally, Kayakari and I were tossing the idea of doing our Genshin group stuff here. And we had decided, wait, no, it'd be better to do a con later in the year so we had more time, that it wouldn't be as hot.
Yeah.
But anyways, we both were like, we'll still enter. Sadly, Kai wasn't able to go and enter, but Lauren and I still did. And yeah, we were sitting there as they're going through the awards, and we're just like, oh yeah, that stuff looked great backstage. Oh yeah. And then they got to announcing Best in Show, and they said Tacocat, and we're just kind of like, us Tacocat? What? Wait, why?
The application, the network failed. The application stopped responding. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, your tacocat.exe and lauren.exe stopped responding for a moment, and the face Lauren made was hilarious because this was actually our first time competing together again since anything pandemic related.
I was gonna say IkiCon 2017 was the last one, if I remember. Or no, 2018.
No, we did stuff in 2018.
Yeah, because
we were going to do 2019, but we ended up not doing 2019. And I don't think we did San Japan that year either. So it'd been quite a while since we had done something.
Yeah.
The last time we competed together is when I thoroughly qualified as an intermediate/journeyman cosplayer. I had a couple of judges awards.
Yeah, because that was Bowsette Boozette, from what I remember, correct?
Yeah, for that we got a walk-on award.
The walk-on we figured out 3 hours before the show, but anyway.
Yes. So it was actually a funny thing is we were talking with a friend the day before this about, because Lauren was like, well, yeah, now we have to enter the Masters category because someone here had to go win Best in Show at MechaCon because Kyra and I won together with our Super Scouts.
Yeah.
And that, based on rules of Texas, bumped us up. And Lauren, again, having not competed with me for years at this point, was just kind of like, And I made some comment about, oh, well, yeah, I guess this is where we go. And my friend was like, well, yeah, that is where you belong. And we laughed it off, because Lauren and I were just going like, sure, you haven't seen all the cool stuff there is. We were thoroughly bamboozled.
Yeah, and actually... that was one thing I was wanting to ask about to a point, because, with MechaCon, you had gotten your first BIS win.
Those were my first, big major award, because I hadn't even won a category award. Because I started competing in Journeyman, because I'd been sewing before I entered my first contest for, maybe 2 or 3 years. I hadn't done much clothing-related thing, but when I talked with Allie about it, we were like, well, I mean, compared to, you, who do classify as a novice, it seems more right that I jump into Journeyman. Mm-hmm. So, yeah. That was surprising. The face, Kai, I don't know who made a better surprised face. Kai, me times 2, or Lauren.
You know what? I was wondering about that earlier.
Because the face Lauren made was pretty good, but the one Kyra made was hilarious too. And I don't know what my face looked like. I was probably just like, what?
Yeah. And
so.
And actually, some of the commentary, some of the judges and stuff made before they announced, you two. I thought it was very interesting, and just kind of it shows your progression as I'm not even going to say cosplayer. If you just
look at the stuff on this rack right here, you'll see a couple of different years up there, because this was the last Comic-Con we did, and that was well sewn. And then this was actually one of the first couple of costumes, that pink thing, it's Aurora V1. And then on the end, you have part of Sophie and Ponyo, and you also have Super Chibi Moon up there somewhere. So even that tells quite a story of growth, just with a couple of costumes.
Yeah, I mean, and also, it's not only understanding technique, but it's just you being an artist and just kind of understanding how to put everything together.
But also a physicist.
And also physicist's brain and just overthinking shit. So.
Yeah.
But no.
But we were very surprised, and it was a cool thing to share with Lauren, because again, we hadn't won any class award before, minus well, together we hadn't. I mean, the one best in show with Kyra I had, but Lauren hadn't. And so it was really cool to get to share that with her as like her first thing back competing with me.
Yeah.
Was this. So even though we were both just kind of like, what?
Right, yeah.
But for what I mentioned earlier, it doesn't stick out too much, but I know. So our Uber driver on the way to the convention. First of all, I was halfway in the car and he tried to drive off. That should have been the first red flag. And like we were like, dude, you got to stop. Or well, Lauren and our friend were. Eventually, he did stop. And then I sat in the seat. We rode over. The driving was was a bit jerky. Not the best Uber ride. Then we get out at the convention center. I turned to grab like my badge or whatever I was grabbing. My sister, oh my God, what is on your skirt? What did you do? And I'm like, what's on my skirt? What happened? Because again, we left the hotel and it was fine.
Right.
Well, our lovely Uber driver had like vegetable oil or something in the seat of his car. On the seat I sat in.
And you know, when you mentioned this in the MTA chat, the day it happened, I was like, how the actual fuck do you have vegetable oil in your backseat?
And that's what we're guessing it was, because Lauren smelled it and was like, it smells like vegetable oil, but I don't want to spend too long smelling this stuff because I really don't know what it is.
Well, I'm like, were they door dashing for a grocery store and just like a bottle leaked or something?
But I feel like you would notice, though.
But then again, apparently your Uber driver was an idiot, so...
Yeah, I mean, he almost left with me halfway in the car.
Exactly, so...
But so I had this spot, which we did go to the bathroom, rinse it off, and thanks to the cosplay repair people at Akon, they had a Tide pen, and we were able to use that to help soften it a little bit, but it's still there. We did a Dawn dish soap bath. I didn't want to scrub directly on the fabric. I wanted to see if like prepping the bath water and agitating it around would work. It's still there. We're working on it. I'm going to try next a Tide bath to the same method. And if that doesn't work, then I'm actually going to like try to put it directly on there and
try to scrub
it up. So hopefully this will work and get it out. But apparently, if you're Ubering to your convention, you should consider bringing something to sit on. I guess maybe that's the moral of the story. Because we had to take Uber, the parking situation was not great.
Was
because
pretty
it all
shit.
filled up.
Yeah, because I remember
all the hotels in the area. So
yeah, because I remember I saw an IG story from Stitch Crimes where she was like waiting for parking for like more than
Allie
an hour.
tried, and they were like second to go into the garage, and it filled up, and they had to turn around. And as is, it was already like $20 a day or something at the different garages you could park in as not a hotel guest.
Mm-hmm.
Which is why we're like, okay, well, Uber. Huh, well, we picked the wrong Uber. But either way, we had a good day, minus the fact I was like, how many hours did I pour into this skirt just to sit in vegetable oil? Huh. So, but it will come out one way or another. And I will share whatever ends up removing it from the fabric.
Yeah, I was wondering about that. I think that would be a good thing to share with people, just in case they plop their ass in vegetable oil, you know.
Hey, I did, apparently. So, a learning opportunity. We'll focus on what we can learn from. Bring a towel. Choose your Uber driver wisely. If they try to drive off with you not fully in the car, maybe you need a different Uber.
Or you just toss the Uber driver out, just pull a GTA and drive off without him.
I feel like, breaking a few laws might impede the whole convention going fun just a smidge.
Only if they find out. If you only get to 1 star, I'm just saying.
Don't listen to him. Or him. He's up there, I think.
No, I am over there. But actually, I will now flip. I will flip to your left. So anyway, hope this has been a good breakdown for Kirsten, Sophie, and Ponyo. The results were amazing. I mean, you really
pretty happy with how they came out.
Yeah, you really just brought your A game on that one, honestly. And it was weird because, like, you just did it not saying, like, oh, I'm bringing my A game. You just did it and just did what and it worked. I mean,
yeah. It was fun. I enjoyed it. And Lauren actually helped more with it, more so than other costumes. Hopefully her next one for Ariel and Aurora, she's gonna pitch in a little bit more, depending on what I allow her to do, because I don't necessarily know if I trust her with either of these.
Oh God.
And not that definitely, and not that definitely. Those are the embroidery machines. So, but she does want to help. So she'll help with something. Just considering what that is still.
Yeah.
But yeah, as for a while there, I was questioning how is it all going to look together, because like we did fittings and stuff beforehand, but not everything all together.
Right. Yeah.
All right. So we only saw it all together when we were like getting ready for the convention the day of. So, which probably shouldn't do that, but
yeah,
it ended up happening that way. I prefer to have like full test fits beforehand, but that's not always feasible, especially because I was doing finals for school during part of this build, and for those of you who know, I'm working on a master's degree in physics, and that takes a lot of time, and one of my finals was literally 36 pages of work, which was done in the process of working on these.
We saw the page count, ladies and gentlemen. It was fucking insane.
I mean, I have it somewhere in here.
Well, that and then Lauren, being as busy as she is, trying to become a veterinarian and stuff.
Well, yeah, that makes it also difficult for doing fittings for her, is trying to time it right for when she's not at work, because she'll mix up whether she's doing day shifts or night shifts, but then she also does rescue work to help do blood work and various things for some of the groups that do TNR or the ones that help foster kittens. So it's a challenge, but we make it work. So she just might be tired and grumpy, and occasionally a little bit grumpy when I say, oh, I don't think, keyword, think there's any pins in this. I was wrong. So it happens. There was just one. It could have been more than one.
If there was more than one, we were like, we haven't heard from Kirsten in a couple days. What the hell happened?
Yeah, so, but also it was a fun process.
But also with what she's doing, you just get to post beans on Instagram.
Beans. Yeah, because some of you got to see the beans the other day when they broke in. And, well, they didn't break in, they were brought in and, thrusted at me. And I was like, oh, it's Bean, hello.
Right, yeah.
So.
Yes, we're going to have that we're going to have that channel point on Kirsten's channel where go find a cat.
Yes, I will. So I have a couple of ideas for when I eventually reach affiliate, which hopefully won't take too long, but we're working on it. Yeah. One is going to be Ask an Astrophysicist, because I don't know, people tend to like asking people who know astrophysics random space questions or even other questions, right? So I figured that was a fun one. But then yes, the highlight is going to be go find a cat, which I'm gonna, because I don't let them in here, which involves me going and just grabbing whatever cat is closest. So it'll be luck of the draw. Which, can you go grab a cat, Rob? Can we do it? Grab a cat. He grabbed a cat, yay.
This is my shithead.
Aw, no, she's sweet. Be nice.
She was like, I was sleeping, you fuck. And she was actually. She was like just laying on my rug back here behind me.
That's funny. But yeah, grab a cat.
She doesn't care about the internet. That's why she doesn't jump on the desk, unlike my previous cat, Tao.
Mercury, I didn't realize you had grab a cat. I know you have the treat one, because whenever I'm paying attention and on your stream, if people haven't redeemed Give Oscar and Nico a treat, I will go give them treats because they're good boys and they need treats.
Actually, I'm kind of surprised Britsy's liking this. Normally she's not like a holding cat. But she's like, fuck, you woke me up.
But yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed this breakdown stuff. We're still playing some with the style of how we do it and how much detail we go into, because we want it to be fun and fun chatter between us, but also something hopefully that can be helpful and educational. We are going to soon start working on pulling in other guests to do similar things. We have a list of people who are interested. We've made a survey thing to gather just a little bit of information for what they want to talk about, and hopefully we will be able to start those soon. I don't know if it will be the next show or maybe the show after.
Yeah, especially because we've got some stuff coming up.
We do. We're busy. Can we talk about it yet?
Actually, at this point, we might as well talk about some of it because, well, fuck, we're going to be there and we're just... but actually, so one we can kind of talk about, we're actually both going to be at OkashiCon.
Oh, that too, yes.
Yeah. So Kirsten is actually going to do Bibbidi Bobbidi Ball Gowns, talking about making ball gowns and everything that goes on into that process.
Yes. So a lot of it will be focused on like the structure, because that's the main challenge with ball gowns is the structure of it, but then your outer layers, how to travel with it, how to store it, I don't know, whatever other questions about ball gowns so that you can go be a gigantic twirly cupcake, because we like cupcakes that are twirly and floofy.
Yes, we do. And I myself am actually going to be presenting two lectures. One is how to get dumb ideas, creative approaches to cosplay photography, talking about all the things that we here as a team talk about and consider when it comes to building ideas and how to make them work and grab people's attention. And then the second one is also thoughts on the cosplay photography journey, in where I talk about stuff I have noticed not only in my creative life but also with others, and what are maybe the things to look for and avoid when it comes to being a creative photographer. So we're all looking forward to that. And the weekend after OkashiCon, okay, this has not been officially announced, and I don't know why, but we know we're on the board, and we're in there, and, well, fuck, let's talk about it.
I mean, they want us to advertise, so this is part of that. They told us to advertise. We're advertising.
Yes. So we're actually going to be guesting at Classic Game Fest this year. So, but we're going to do a little bit more than just guesting. So for one, Kirsten is going to be a cosplay judge. Once again. The second time. Fun. Yes. And actually, one of our good friends, E-Man, Creative Mindframe, is going to be the MC and a judge. He's so much fun, you know.
But that's not the only friend of ours that will be there.
Yes. Jordan Cosplay is going to be there. There's going to be a bunch of great guests. I'm actually looking forward to. I'm looking forward to meeting Tim Kitzrow.
There's also a lot of great music guests.
Yes, our friends from Descendants of Erdrick, Bitforce, Masters of Unlocking, the Arcadian, Zero Wolf. They're great musicians.
Vince not going?
Huh?
No DJ Rockman?
Oh yeah,
Footman?
DJ Footman, DJ Anime Titties. Yes, he will be there.
We give him a lot of nicknames that are not his official name, but the official name is DJ Rockman for now, until we convince him to change it.
DJ, but no, we'll all be there. Just come out and have fun, and also we're going to be running a photo booth this year.
Going to be a lot of fun.
And we've got some ideas to make everything just a little more extra.
Well, we like, as you can guess by now, we like things extra. Especially me.
Mm-hmm.
So
we're definitely looking forward to that. We're trying to figure out how that might change up the schedule, because also with somebody being at a convention the weekend after CGF.
Blame Kyra. She convinced me. I was sold, hook, line, sinker, all that.
Yeah.
So we're going to Anime Fest. Lauren is too. That's what actually Aurora and Ariel are for. So if you watch any of my crafty streams during the week, that's what I'm working on, is our A-Fest builds.
Yeah. So there might be 3 weeks where we might be kind of not broadcasting. We don't know yet.
A little up in the air. But if you follow us on social media, especially the MTA stuff, you will know ahead of time when we are and when we are not streaming, as well as like our standard fun stuff, whether it's Genshin or Crafty Nights.
Yeah, so definitely for the main MTA group, you can find us everywhere. Make them awesome on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, kind of
Twitter-ish. He doesn't really check it. I tag him in it, but
Yes, and then also for Kirsten is Tacocat Cosplay. That's probably,
On
if you're not
everything.
finding us, find her. She'll probably just repost.
I tag us often, so it works.
That's a nice boulder.
That is a nice boulder. So we went location scouting yesterday, and I was telling Rob, I was like, well, yeah, we need to do some funny footage while we were doing this. And at one point, I hand him my phone. I'm like, go over there. I'm going to go jump on this boulder. And he was kind of like...
Yeah.
And I was like, it's a nice boulder. For those of you who don't know, because Shrek and Donkey being Donkey.
Yeah.
So, shenanigans.
And actually, the whole wild Rob thing was just completely unplanned.
I was just filming, and I happened to say that, and he went running.
I just happened to yeah.
So if you want to know exactly what we're talking about, look on our Instagrams. It's actually on both of our pages right now, so you can go watch it and get a laugh because it is pretty funny.
Yes.
Don't leave us unsupervised, apparently.
Hey, at least we didn't have Luis there.
Yeah, and neither of us fell off the boulders. Because, Rob was climbing up to one at one point, and I was like, what you doing there? All right, don't fall. He was like, I hope not.
Yeah. Don't want to... All right, folks. So, we hope you learned something today. This will be going up on YouTube. Share with all your friends. And actually,
if you have any good feedback for us for ways we could possibly improve and do things better, because like I said, so far we're trying to just keep it like casual conversation, but also some educational, hopefully, content. Yeah. But yes, share feedback if there's ways we can improve. Yeah. That's all I got.
Yeah, but anyway, like I said, find us on all the socials. That's how you know what we're going to be up to. We haven't talked about what's maybe one episode before we do 3 weekends of conventions. But we'll figure out something. I don't know. But you can always probably find us playing Genshin. there is that. There's Genshin.
Yeah, we do a lot of stupid stuff in Genshin. And soon, thanks to a certain Merkitty, we will be adding Phasmophobia to the random game list. Yes. Actually, I need to bring my card up here so I can buy it. I was going to do it the other day, but... Oh, and yes, Merkitty, her petticoat will be floaty. The plan so far, is a 4-layer petticoat that is going 20 yards, 10 yards, 5 yards, 2.5. Sorry, it's the distraction. I get distracted easily, okay? And I like talking about sewing.
I was gonna say, are you going to be good in Phasmophobia then? Because I don't know, you might get distracted and then got guy. I don't know.
I've already promised to those we will play with, if there's the challenges where it's okay, this is gonna mean pretty much certain death, I'll go do it because then I can screw around as a ghost.
For those who are about to die, we salute you. But anyway, folks, you know where to find us, and we hope you found this stream enjoyable. But most importantly, get dumb ideas, make them awesome.
And extra.